Hello YouTube! In today's video I'm going to be analyzing a back workout that Tennyson posted on his page roughly a year ago, where he followed our current Mr.Olympia through one of his training sessions. And I find it very interesting because it truly showed the difference between natural and enhanced training. And this is what motivated this video, right? I'm not going to sit there and criticize Sebum's workout because he is a multiple-time Mr. Olympia. He clearly knows what he's doing. But since the training in session in particular was shared to a wide audience by someone who has a majority of teenagers on their page, I think it's important to show people the distinction and to be able to point out the things that work for Sebum but would not work for you, because there is a massive difference between what a natural and an enhanced athlete can accomplish. And I know how teenagers are, especially when it comes to someone that they love. They stop thinking and they're just going to copy it because they want to be like their idols. This is the worst mistake you can make. Don't be all fine boy. I know that Sebum is very charismatic, he's beloved, most likely because he has a mustache, right? And therefore you're going to want to just shut off your brain and do as he does. This will only destroy your gains and your ability to have a big back. And this is when I come in. I'm no Sebum, of course, you can see me right now, but I'm someone with a pretty advanced physique and I have a pretty big upper back. And I developed it with certain methods that clash with the methods that Mr. Olympia presented in his video. So I want to sort of offer a different perspective, one that I hope is going to open your eyes and help you decide for yourself what type of training would be best for you to actually follow. So as I said, the training in particular that I'm going to discuss today was a back workout, which already tells us a lot about the format of the split, because it's a bro split, right? If you train back, only back for a day, it's a bro split. That's what I define as a bro split. This means that for each day of the week, you're going to train a different muscle group. So Monday back, Tuesday biceps, Thursday, you're going to do something like abs, then Wednesday you might have done something like triceps. This what defines the bro split. And this, for a natural lifter, is the absolute worst way to train, for a simple reason. It is way too low in frequency, and it is way too high in volume. You do way too much on a given day. The reason why this makes sense for someone like Sebum is because he's enhanced. He can recover from that, and all of the volume he does goes towards building up the muscles. And actually, if you look at his upper back, it was his big flaw in the past, his big weakness, and he blew it up following these methods by doing a shit ton of volume only for the back. It worked beautifully for him, but I can tell you for a fact that this will not work for you for the reasons I already explained. So stay away from methods like this. Low frequency, high volume on a daily basis for a single muscle group is not the optimal way to train for a natural lifter. There is a little caveat to that, or a little thing that I want to add, because if we are to look at bro splits, it would be true to say that the one muscle group that makes the most sense to train in that fashion would be back, upper back, because the upper back can take a ton of punishment and it has a ton of work capacity. And this is why I also saw sometimes naturals training that fashion. But the issue is that most of the time, these were people with very advanced physiques who wanted to trash their upper backs because they already had built the foundations. You most likely are not like that. Your upper back is still in development, and therefore you absolutely do not need that much volume. So instead, what someone like you should do is split those sets. The two guys, Will and Sebum, did six exercises, not 6 sets. They did a total of, I think, 15 to 20 sets for back. That is a ton. And granted, a lot of them were drop sets. They did single top sets. So the intensity was skewed, but still, it's way too much. You would be better off taking all of these sets and spreading them throughout your workouts. That way you maximize recovery, you maximize intensity, and you also are going to make sure that you don't end up doing a ton of junk volume. We're going to get back to these concepts because they are extremely important to understand for natural lifters. Now, we also must discuss the quality of the reps. You see, when you train one muscle group for one day, like a back day, the quality of your reps is going to naturally dwindle. Why? Because you fatigue. It's absolutely normal. So let's say you have 10 sets to do. By set 9, you are completely exhausted, and you understand that the quality of the reps of set 9 are not going to be the same as set 1. Meaning that there comes a time in the workout where you would be better off stopping because the reps you do add absolutely nothing to the workout. Now you just accumulate fatigue. Someone like Sebum can take that fatigue and turn it into a stimulus. You can't. And a lot of people don't have the ability to recognize that. They just keep pushing and they think, okay, the more broken I am, the better. You hear that a ton. Destroy yourself in the gym. The issue is that this is not sustainable. This is the issue with the bro split. This is why if you train like this as a natural, you can only do it once a week. I have no doubt that Sebum can do that type of stuff twice a week if he wanted, but you can't. And that is going to be a big issue because a simple math equation is going to explain to you exactly what I mean by this. Let's say you train back once a week and you do 10 sets, right? 10 hard sets. You try to be as hard as possible. You are going to be outdone by a guy who trains back 3 times a week and does 4 sets, 4 sets, 4 sets. At the end of the day, he got 2 extra sets on you. He got better recovery. He did more intense work because he had less sets to do. That's only 4 sets. That could be 4 sets of one exercise, and yet it's better than what you did. The only thing that you have on the guy is you did more volume on one day. So if you have the ability to repeat that 3 times a week, now you get 30 sets total and you get much more than him. This is the balance that you have to strike. It's absolutely important. And bro splits don't allow you to hit that balance because they fixate frequency at once a week. So that's already my issue with using a back day for someone who wants to develop their back. It's a bad idea. Then we spoke about intensity. Why exactly is a back day something bad for intensity? Don't you trash the back? Well, you absolutely do, but you also do a shit ton of sets. And I just explained to you that your intensity is naturally going to degrade. You cannot be as intense for set 1 that you are on set 10. It's physically impossible because if it were possible, it would mean that your muscle is not fatiguing and therefore it's not being put under tension and not getting the benefits. So it would be counterintuitive. So you also have to understand that the less sets you do on a given day, the more intense you can be. And now you also have to meet the sweet spot. What is the sweet spot? When you stop being intense and it's better to move on. For a ton of people, it will be 2 exercises. 1 if you're a novice. For some people who are more endurant, 3 exercises. After 3 exercises for a given muscle group, you move on. There is no need to keep going because if you keep going, what do you accumulate? Junk volume. Junk volume is defined by the fact that your intensity is now so low that it's far removed from the types of weights you can lift. Simple example, let's say you can bench 225 or you can horizontal press 225 and you get to a point in the workout where pushing 100 pounds is a struggle. Do you think that these reps are good for you? You might have gotten to a point where you're dug so deep, your baseline is so short that now a weight that is not even 50% of your max is challenging. That is abnormal. It is the sign that you are doing junk volume. You are doing reps that don't have any relevancy in your training. If anything, you are at a point where you are accruing fatigue for no stimulus. Someone like Sebum will be able to handle that. You will not be able to handle that. And the proof is in the pudding because by the end of the workout, Will was destroyed. And he was destroyed because his muscular baseline was shot. Quickly, the baseline is a very simple concept. You start the workout, your baseline is 100% if you're fully recovered, and you are at max capacity to express your strength and to develop power so that you can actually build the muscle. The more you train, the more you dig into the baseline to a point where you become ineffective. It's the example I just used with the bench press. Let's take Will. Let's say he started with being able to row 3 plates. By the end of the workout with Sebum, he could barely row 1 plate. These are just hypotheticals. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Most likely, if you're just a beginner into lifting, you'll say it's a good thing. He's very tired. And I would say it's a bad thing. He dug too deep. He took too much out of his recovery jug for nothing in return because the more he dug, the less recovery he had, but the reps he was doing to dig were not relevant reps because he was not using a relevant weight. This is extremely important to understand. You have your relative intensity and you have your absolute intensity. The absolute intensity is the max ability of the body to move the weight. So for Will, it was 3 plates. He got to 1 plate. Look at the difference between the relative intensity he was at the end of the workout and the one at the start of the workout. That is way too much of a difference. This is the sign that the reps he was doing with that weight were not relevant. And this is why he was entirely shot at the end of the workout. He himself explained to Sebum how shocked and surprised he was to be that tired. And you can tell he sort of enjoyed it because, of course, we like being exhausted at the end of a workout, but it is also not a good thing. This is not something to be pursued because, again, it does not promote frequency and it doesn't promote the ability to go into the gym times and times again. Now, to move on to the other issue I had with the workout was presented to the people on Will's channel, the training split that Sibum had Will go through did not include any posterior chain exercise. And you could tell me, well, yes, it's a back workout. Yeah, but that's sort of the point. The back workout is so rigid that now you cannot include something that also trains the legs, even though it's what makes the most sense. Because if you look at the way I program for back, I always include a hip hinge. I always include a pull. Why? It makes the most sense. You also train your back with these movements. You warm up and also you accumulate more tonnage for the legs. It's typical of a bro split to not allow that type of freedom because they split back day and leg day. And now you have the worst of both worlds. You have a back day that doesn't have any synergistic movements for the posterior chain, and you have a leg day where you do way too many exercises for the legs once a week. You crush your legs, but you don't get the frequency required to build big legs as a natural lifter, which is why a pull is the perfect back day opener. Times and times again, if you do a back day, you decide to do a back day, I want to see a heavy pull or heavy hip hinge opening the day. I think it's mandatory. The only way you can sort of work your way around it would be to open with a heavy pull-up, variations, whatever, or you can also open with something like a heavy row from the floor, which also works the posterior chain. But never start with something like a lat pull down or a machine. You're wasting precious intensity. Again, you are at 100% baseline. This is go time. You're at your freshest. What exercise do you want to do at your freshest? The one that is going to tax your system the most. In this case, the issue is that they did an exercise I would consider to be good, but they did it at the third or fourth slot, and it was a barbell row. Was it any wonder why Will and even Sibum were quote-unquote struggling to move weight? Their intensity was shot, their baseline was shot. The movement where they needed to be the freshest to express maximal power was not placed properly in the workout. And for someone like Sibum, he could say, well, it's because I want to be pre-fatigued. Fair enough. Bro has titles. I don't have shit to say. I'm just some guy in a garage. But for someone like Will and for someone like you, it is not proper programming practices. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention when it comes to opening a back day with a pull or a hip hinge is the fact that you get more leg frequency, which is always good. You get also more back thickness because many people, we talk too much about width and thickness. How do we develop this with pull-ups, whatever? Something I can tell you for a fact that if you want to get thick, do pulls, do heavy hip hinges. That works your thickness. Don't get fooled by the name posterior chain or hip hinge. You are still going to use the upper back and the upper spine to actually stabilize the weight, so it's going to become mobilized. And on top of that, by doing this, you take away a slot for another back exercise, which means that you're going to do less redundant exercise. You will not have to do 5 machine exercises for the back, because I can tell you that this one opener for the posterior chain is going to fatigue you greatly. Fatigue is not necessarily a bad thing if it takes care of slots in the workout. Now you did your deadlift or a heavy stiff leg deadlift at the start, and you can skip 1 back exercise or even 2 back exercises and get similar results. You will find that the discussion of fatigue to stimulus ratio is widely different when it comes to enhanced lifters. They try to stay away from that, although I've seen Sibum doing high rep deadlifts with plenty of weight, which also have a tremendous fatigue to stimulus ratio, tons of fatigue, which also shows that he knows that he can handle it. I'm a little bit more worried about you, however, because you have to keep in mind that even though the back is a big muscle group, which is why I said that a back day is sort of justified because you want to do a ton of volume for the back, it's still the back, right? Whether you do a horizontal pull, vertical pull, whether you do a machine row or a pull down or whatever, it's still the back working. You still have some areas that are going to interconnect, intercross, that are going to work together. So when you do a total of 4 horizontal pulls and 1 vertical pull, that's still 5 exercises for the back. Don't think that one portion of the back is going to light up on this one and the other ones are going to fall asleep. No, the entirety of the back gets tired. So guess what? If you have an exercise for, let's say, real delts, and you do it at the 4th slot, and you think, well, it's for real delts, so it doesn't matter if I did back exercises before. Well, it does matter because the back is also involved. So now your back is fatigued, you're not as intense as you could be for the real delt. And if you tell me, well, that's pre-fatigue, now the back is fatigued and the real delt have to do more work. That's only true in certain dispositions and occasions, but for this one in particular, if you do a pulling motion for the rear delt, if the back is tired, it's only going to be a limiting factor, which is why most of the time what ends up happening is you end up trying to survive the workout. Has that ever happened to you? Or you do a workout and you're not in the moment. You're not doing the exercise in the moment because you have your eyes fixated on the fourth set of this exercise and you think, okay, I need to make it there. I need to be able to be fresh there. If you ever catch yourself thinking like this, your program is poorly crafted because now you're not intense on the set you're supposed to focus on, which is the present set, because you're constantly worried that you're going to have to give more effort later. So what you do is you sandbag. And something that Will was doing throughout the workout was that he knew he had to be able to hang with C-bum. So he made sure he actually lasted through the workout. And even by doing that, he was tired at the end. So you see that these practices are not good. You have only one back. Understand that if you do too many exercises for that back, you don't get more stimulus necessarily or more results. This is a childish mindset of more is always better. No, enough is always better, just enough to grow. And this also is going to lead me to the problem with trying to train the back as an amalgamation of small muscles. There are some movements that quote unquote isolate the back, but as I said, it works together. That's the beauty of this muscle group, which is why I always encourage you to split 2 sets throughout the week because it makes more sense to me. But if you don't and you think you're going to be able to isolate, what is going to end up happening to you is what I just described. Some areas of the back are going to be underdeveloped. A ton of people don't understand why, for example, their traps don't grow, but their lats grow plenty. Then you look at their program, it's because they always start with a vertical pull, and the movements for the traps are at the end of the workout when they're already tired. You are deprioritizing the movement for the trap by putting it lower down the intensity, the pyramid of intensity. Is it any wonder why your traps don't grow? I was sort of taken aback by something that Sibum was saying. I don't know if he was being facetious. He said he sort of winged it. He went into the gym thinking, okay, I want to do rows, and then he just improvised the workout. If he does, the guy is a monster, because becoming Mr. Olympia without actually planning your workout is insane. But it also worried me because I know that teenagers are going to listen to it and think, oh great, freedom, I can just wing it. No, he does because he has tremendous instinct for what he needs to develop. He knows exactly what movements work what, and on top of that, he has the joker of PEDs, where his total ability to handle fatigue and volume is much greater. You don't have that. So you're going to wing it, and you're going to end up doing what I just described, which is you're not going to look at the order of sets, and therefore, the order, the random order that you just decide on randomly is going to dictate the way your body is going to look. Do you want randomness to dictate the way your body is going to look? I hope not. So actually, write down what you're going to do in the gym, strategize, and make sure that you prioritize the muscle groups that you want to see grow by lowering the amount of work that you're going to do. And this is why, for someone like you, I recommend, instead of doing what they did, which is way too much work, to do 1 to 2 pulls a day. What I mean by this is you're going to pick a vertical pull or horizontal pull, and on days where you want to work the back, you're going to do that. That is plenty work. Do 4 sets to 30 of vertical pulls, 4 sets to 30 of horizontal pulls, and tell me if your back doesn't grow from that. And then from here, we are going to work towards pushing the progression in a different direction. This is something that I'm going to be covering at the end of the video because you, of course, at some point will want to do more volume. That's only natural. But there are better ways than just stacking sets on sets for a single day, which is why you also are going to have to follow a template that is not a bro split. And the reason why I want you to do that is because for someone who's getting started, someone who wants a bigger back, focusing on quality reps is important. When you do a shit ton of reps, you just go through the motion, especially when you do five exercises for tons of sets. This is not good, right? It's not just that the intensity of the reps you're doing through the baseline theory I just explained to you is just on paper atrocious. It's that even mentally you're not there. You're not in the muscle. You're not in the moment. If you do less sets, however, with a select amount of reps, you're going to find that it's so much easier to focus. This is how I program for novices and people who are getting started and how I schedule progression. Start small in terms of volume and then expand. The issue if you start with too much volume like this workout demonstrates is that once you start focusing on intensity, you're in a pickle because the only way to do that is going to be to shrink down. So now you're just thinking like you're going backwards. Whereas if you start small with intense and quality reps here, the expansion is easy. It's smaller, it's slower, but it's easier. And it also promotes a healthier approach to training. On top of that, you save time. Wouldn't you want to be done faster in the gym and to be able to go to the gym more often in the week? I think that this is an approach that most people would actually vibe with much more than those long ass sessions where at some point you just look at your watch and you're like, I want to go home. Since when is the gym like a classroom? Since when do you want it to be done? You should be sad when you leave the gym. That way you want to go back in. But the only way to achieve that is to still have some energy at the end of the session. If you're pooped at the end of every session, you think you work hard. I think you don't work hard. I think you work dumb. There is a difference. The only people that can work hard work consistently, and to work consistently, you need to work smart. And it's interesting also because you saw the difference between Sebum and Will at the end of the session. Sebum was out of breath. Will was done. I guarantee you that Will had to take at least 7 to 10 days to recover from that and then train back again. Sebum was fine. Different beasts, guys. Natural versus enhanced. It's not the same thing and it's not the same methodologies. And talking about methodologies, I also would like to point out that the practice of doing drop sets for every single set is a terrible idea. For the reason I just explained, I saw them doing that in the workout. Pro bodybuilders love doing that because it's free volume for them. But for you, if you do, let's say, your machine rows with 3 plates, all right? And you do so many drop sets that you end up with 1 plate, and it's tough. Don't you think there is a problem? Compare the absolute intensity of the weight you're using. 1 to 3 plates. You're not even moving 50% and it's tough. What does it tell you? 1, you took so little rest that the muscle is of course not recovered, but it doesn't mean that you're doing something relevant. Or 2, even with rest, even with a cheated drop set, you still can't do it, like Will couldn't do it. Why? Because the muscle is already so tired. This is not a sign of a good workout again. Your intensity and your baseline is so short that you can barely move baby weight that should not even be a warm-up for you. This is, again, not a sign that you have been working hard. This is a sign you have been working dumb. And this is only junk volume. Do you think that doing reps with 1 plate on the row is going to do anything relevant to your muscle? Your muscle can handle 3 times that weight. The only reason why it's struggling is because it's at the end of its rope. You are accruing fatigue, you are accruing junk volume for the sake of sensation, just because it feels good to be exhausted or for the pump. All of that is minor. It doesn't actually add up when it comes to hypertrophy. So again, focus on quality reps instead. And if you are out of breath when you do your things like this, those drop sets, or if you often find yourself out of breath in your training, like these 2 guys were, understand it's also not a good sign, because it means that you're prioritizing cardiovascular endurance over muscular endurance. You are a bodybuilder. You are supposed to want to train the muscle over the heart and the lungs, which will be trained regardless if you do your cardio and if you do giant sets or drop sets sometimes, or if you do supersets. In this case, it was interesting because Sebum himself was tired, but for him, if you compare the amount of fatigue he was getting, he was very cardiovascularly fatigued, but it correlated with the amount of muscular fatigue he got. Whereas if you look at the weight that Will was forced to use to hang with Sebum's practice, he was mostly doing cardio. He was doing cardio with weights. There are better ways to do that. So if you often catch yourself doing movements or rep ranges that get you out of breath, you either have terrible cardio, you need to fix that, or the practices that you employ in your training are bad. And I also, in that same vein, want to say that in terms of recovery and ability to repeat workouts, if there is a session in your split that you cannot repeat, like let's say you do it and you know it's a kamikaze session and it's once every 10 days, and if you try to repeat it every 5 days, you just can't because it's not enough recovery time, that's a bad session. I know it goes against popular belief of kill it and no pain, no gain. This mindset creates injuries and it creates low frequency. This is not the proper way to train as a natural. What you want is sessions that you can handle, you can survive, and you can do repetitively throughout the years. This is what works best. If Will attempted to implement that specific back day in his program, he would never be able to progress because he would never be able to stick to it, just like you would never be able to stick to it. So don't make the mistake of repeating that exact workout. it is only going, again, to lead to less gains. And when it comes to that, we are getting back to what I promised, and that is the method to actually build up volume for back, because we're talking about a back workout. So if you're supposed to start with like one vertical pull and then you graduate to 1 to 2, how exactly do we move up in terms of volume, right? Because you just said that we're not supposed to stack sets on top of sets for one day. Well, my guidelines are never go upwards of 3 exercises a day for the back, and never try to go above something like 10 sets for one day, because that's already a ton of sets in my opinion. What you can do is, if you want to do more volume, to go the frequency route. Try to train them more frequently. Try to train the back more frequently. You will be surprised how fast the back can recover. You can do a ton of vertical pulls on Monday, focus on that and do like 6 sets. And on Wednesday, you'll be able to do horizontal pulls. And maybe on Friday, you can go back again and do a variation for a pull down. That way, as I explained at the start, you do just as many sets, as many reps, but you do them more intensely because your baseline is fresh, you'll recover better, and on top of that, you'll also find that it's easier psychologically. You're going to still be attached to the training, you're still going to have a good time. That is the way to go. If you want more information, I made a full video about leveling up your back. It's in the description. And if you need an image, if you need an actual program, and you're like, I don't understand what you mean, how exactly do I get to the point where I can train back every single day? Description, it's the ZOD program I posted previously. You train back every single day. Every single time you step into the gym, you train back, and hard. I don't have you do baby shit. You don't do pull downs with 40%. You do heavy movements. But because of the way I program, every single part of the back is targeted for every single day. And on top of that, I manage the entire fatigue of the back because, as I said, you cannot isolate portions of the back. You have to treat it as a whole. That is the proper way to actually approach back training, something that bro splits do horribly because they do back days, like as if the back was one muscle. That is no bueno. And it's something that Will himself recognizes, because at the end of the workout, he tells Sebum, I usually do 1 row and 1 pull down a day, so like 2 exercises, a total of 8 sets, and then I leave. And then he follows up by saying, oh, but today I felt so much different. Well, of course you felt different. You did a shit ton of junk volume. So now you're going to be beaten down for the next 10 days. This doesn't mean that you're going to get more gains. You just got more fatigue. His approach at the start was the correct one, and it's no surprise he has a good physique for a natural lifter. And yet he was sort of, and I'm sure that he wasn't really sucked into this method, it was for the video's sake, but he sort of started to lean towards the idea that maybe Sebum's methods were better. I have an issue with that because teenagers don't have the ability to understand what is good or bad for programming, and they're going to think, okay, more is better, so let me do the same back workout. Well, no, do the back workout that will actually describe. Do 1 row, 1 pull down, then leave and repeat that after 2 days. This is actually the good way to build up volume through frequency and intensity. And I'm going to leave you with that. So you tell me what you think. I like to actually decipher and dissect enhanced versus natural programs and the way one should approach the lifting method when they are not on PEDs. There's a ton of videos about that on YouTube, so if you guys like this formula, you let me know. You can even give me some ideas about trainings that you saw about a pro bodybuilder and you wonder how you would need to approach that very same muscle group to get gains. I would be happy to cover that, but for tonight, it's going to be it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon.